Now, since independence in 1960, Nigeria's average growth rate of its per capita GDP has been 1.7% a year as average. Real GDP per capita was about $1,222 between 1950 and 1959. The amount rose to $1,477 under the regime of the country's first president. As Nigeria marks its 61st anniversary of independence, its citizens are stuck in a general state of despondency as a result of general insecurity in the country, rising unemployment, and of course, high cost of living. The country's economy has been stagnant, growing at less than 1% cumulatively during the past 6 years, far below the population growth rate of 2.6%. It also has about 40% of the population, or about 200 million people, living below the poverty line. Well, despite these problems, Nigeria has no doubt made substantial social-economic progress, at least since 1999, when it returned to democracy rule after decades of military rule, as the economy has grown more than sevenfold. A big chunk of this is explained by the rebasing of the economy in 2014, with the enormous potential the country is blessed with. Well, the question on everyone's lip now is at 61, is the Nigerian economy truly free and independent? Well, to provide solutions, answers to these questions, and of course, many others, as we take a look, an holistic look at Nigeria's economy at 61. I have joining me via Skype is the Chief Consultant, B. Adedikpe Associates Limited, Dr. Biodun Adedikpe. Good afternoon, Dr. Adedikpe. Happy Independence to you.
Thank you very much, Tolu. Good afternoon, and a happy to you and all our viewers.
Great. Now, I would like to start this way. 61 years. Yes, I was not born then, obviously. But take us through what has happened with regards to policies. We've heard, at least I was able to hear of the SAP. I've heard about the pyramids. A lot of stories that we hear, how beautiful, how it was $1 to 1 naira. While we hear all of these stories our parents tell us. Take us through the right picture of what it looked like and where we find ourselves today. How did we get here?
All right, thank you so very much for that question, Tolu. In fact, that question reminds me of an engagement at a conference in 2004, where I was invited to speak about Nigeria's economic independence up until June 2004 and the relationship between our economy and the oil sector. So, and I look back at that some 17 years ago and look at where we are today. What I said in London 17 years ago, not any different than where we are today. And I'll put it in this perspective. If you run the profile economy from independence till date, the basic summary we can make is that it's not yet independent. That's taking it from where you started. But we can now build a narrative. What was the focus between independence 1960 and 1970 when we saw the end of the Civil War? Okay, the focus economically was import substitution. So what we're driving at then was to produce things locally. We used to import from what they called then the metropolis. Because then London, metropolis, while of course Nigeria was a colony. So our economy was inextricably linked. So what we represented then was to produce agricultural, items then to the metropolitan, that is to the metropolis. So that was the concept behind the Nigerian railway at the time and every development we had in infrastructure. So out of Nigeria and to UK primarily. Now independence came and we felt this was an opportunity. Two things. One, to shift the trade direction on the one hand and not to be to United Kingdom. Secondly, how do we also begin to produce locally those things we used to export produce for? So we went the way of import substitution. And in fact, the contribution of manufacturing to Nigeria GDP rose as high as 10%. By the time we got to the end of that, when we look at Nigeria, – talking about how to grow the economy. So going from there, we now began White Elephant Project. So that was where we began to lose our bearing. In fact, as you said, Granite pyramids, talking about the very exalted position of Nigeria, crude oil market, in the palm oil market, also cocoa globally, top 10, in fact, top 5 for most of these agri items. Now, by the time we got middle of the 70s, we had started seeing petrodollars. So our attention shifted. And I want to say something here that is important. We always lose sight of it. Today, we talk about external debt of Nigeria. The problem of Nigeria's external debt actually started in 1978. That was when we took what we in economics knew then to be the jumbo loans, when Nigeria raised debt financing from the international capital markets, ICN. So we called it then in economic cycles as the jumbo loans, all right? That was when the whole thing started. We took monies in order to set up and in fact establish a strong steel subsector. So talking about talking also about the, also the steel production that is as we had it then. The concept then was for Nigeria to pursue high-end and high-value manufacturing, which will take us beyond just processing agricultural produce. So by the time we got now into the 80s, we had started mismanaging the economy. Corruption had come into it. In fact, in 1980, we introduced what was then called the Economic Stabilization Act. And the idea then was that our economy was, so how do we stabilize the economy? Then the issue of FX we talk about today, Nigeria. So in response to that, we came then about 1984-85 about the great debate. That was what we called it then. And that was whether to take IMF loan plus its conditionalities or to ignore the loans but adopt the conditionalities locally as homegrown economic concept. But of course, it was a deception. We merely deceived ourselves by the SAM that we had is homegrown because we did not take the IMF loans. Whereas in reality, SAM is a concept of the World Bank, which we took hook, line, and sinker, and did not take into account the realities of our own economy, adopted and implemented. Of course, I still recollect vividly in May 1989, we had in Nigeria what was then called the SAP riots. Because by then we adopted SAP in 1986. We also went the way of adopting what we called the 10-headed, emerged from a man, an economist called Williamson. Okay, we call it the institutions, agenda. All right, you deregulate, you privatize, you monetize, and all of these concepts that we refer to as liberalizing the economy. That was where our mistake started. Now, when you liberalize in the sense we did, and that was a part of this conversation in 1987, okay, where we said, open all the borders. Whatever you don't want in Nigeria, slam a very high import duty on it. The government of Nigeria then, and the World Bank, because the two of them were the ones that brought up that project. And I said, Nigeria will go that way. We are asking for trouble that we might not see in 1987 when this conversation began, but we see it several decades later, because there's no in this entire world that ever developed and emancipated by borders. There has to be some closure of the borders at some point where you develop capacity internally to produce what your people consume, so that you can also in the process gain the strength and the, so in which case within that period necessarily, and this is the way that happens all over the world. Go and study history. I'm talking about economic history running to centuries. I'm not talking about just the century we are in or the last 1 century. I'm talking about economic management in centuries. But we've been that wise in the sense that oftentimes we run to foreigners who give us the risk for how to the economy, and so they tell us what will be of interest to them. No foreigner will come to close your borders or introduce subsidy that will make your own producer stronger and so that what your country represents as market for their manufacturers will ever. It's not done anywhere. But Nigeria, we keep taking what they tell us. We do those things foolishly to get a different result. So in the 1980s, what happened to the economy? We began to manufacture high-end products. I will use an example here. Peugeot 504 was domesticated to the extent of 70% of its components were manufactured in Nigeria. That was the best ever Nigeria achieved in automotive industry. 70% of the components of Peugeot 504 were being manufactured locally, all right? Lost it. Instead of building on that, we threw open our borders in the name of SAP, and our vehicles were now being imported into Nigeria. And this is the basic logic of it. Or you import, the more wealth you are transferring to the rest of the world, and the creating offshore. So we can be here and complain from now to tomorrow. Foreign exchange is just a financial matter. It doesn't talk to the fundamentals, what drives that demand. Okay? So now today, we import vehicles. There's, thank God, in the last 7 years thereabout, we have 15 that assemble vehicles in Nigeria. But the big question is this: where are the components being assembled coming from? That is where more jobs are being created than here where together to make a vehicle. All right. So if you look then at the 90s, that was when we first had a water with recession and of course serious currency challenges. We managed through them by 1994, 96, 97. Things stabilized somewhat. 98 came, challenges with politics. Between then, 1999 we went into democracy. Now when we went into democracy, we thought, yes, thank God, this is a new dimension. Things will work better. And I remember vividly on October 1st, 1999, I was on a program, live, and after my 1 hour conversation, I was asked the question: what should the government that will be the game changer for Nigeria? And I remember saying, we should recognize that Nigerians were hardworking and we are also entrepreneurial. Let his government pay attention to only one thing you said. I said, let him pay attention to the power sector. And I said, attention to him. Unfortunately for us, each time we economists and analysts in Nigeria, there's always a foreign voice that will speak to our government and they go a different direction. The following week, Minister Ambassador's cabinet responded to the statement I made and said his government will cover in the private sector. I mean, in the power sector. And it is the private sector that I told myself, we will generate power, we will transmit power and distribute it. And everything is true and unbundled on the private sector. I told myself, I'll wait and see. Now, I also criticized his government then frontally and heavily, everywhere I went to speak, that they had no clear economic agenda. And that's, important thing. So they produced a pamphlet about the size of my hand and published that as that 1999 to 2003. That was the response. Okay, 2004 together a fantastic economic team. So what happened in the 2000? So we began, as we called it, yes, that was in the right direction. Reforms variously to deal with corruption, to deal with the economy and the rest of it. And Nigeria was truly wonderfully blessed, I would say. President Obasanjo in office, you can go and check the data. God, these are things I interrogate every day. Not a single day that President Obasanjo was in office, did we have the price of crude oil in our budget assumption. Every day of the 8 years President Obasanjo spent in the office, so that was grow to $64 billion US. That's the peak in our history of the last 61 years. So now that also gave us the capacity, and our consumption pattern tremendously changed in the last 60 years, where Nigerians now have a preference for whatever is imported against whatever is manufactured locally. So I'm not one of those that we always want to put blame on the government, but that we always that the blame is on us. Because the typical Nigerian prefers to consume what is imported than what is produced. Yeah. The other side to it is that our economy is also structured in such a way don't create wealth. What we have been doing the last 61 years is more, and I will explain that very simply. Okay? If I said something to you, Tolu, and what I said to you is something I imported.
Yeah.
Now I see the money from you, I apply the product. So wealth is transferred outside, where it is actually. But the seeming margin I make from selling to you comes to me. So what I therefore flaunt as wealth as a Nigerian is actually wealth created by a Nigerian to another. So the real wealth created lies with the manufacturer. And that, so that we can take some other questions. So as of today, we imported 61, 51, 41, 10, 7 years ago. The latest data available showed that on a monthly basis in Nigeria, 2.3 trillion naira worth of goods. So tell me, currency gain value, if most of what you generate as transferred to foreign countries, the blame is not on the government as far as I'm concerned. The blame is on us. But what I always say is this: government itself must lead in that process. Should we need to buy vehicles for the presidency, National Assembly, and we cannot find the political will and courage to go to Navy and corporation to produce for us to specify. When we want to buy vehicles from abroad, we give them specifications. Why give Innocent the specification of what they want? And let him produce for the presidency, produce for all our political leaders. They need to show leadership. Why can't we, in the government, say that we have something we want to do, we are going to engage experts, and not foreign experts. I've been a victim of that. I can say that openly without mentioning the agency anyway. I gave a very good idea to the current government a few years back on how they can manage this economy in the form we do in the private sector. We call it performance management. So in my firm, we developed a concept that will enable the vice president to design targets for every minister in the cabinet, and then a system basis of measuring their performance, so that we are no longer measuring how much was allocated to ministries, but measuring them based on what they actually deliver. Then what happened? They took the concept, gave it to a foreign consulting firm, and that was the end of it. But today we are not really in that direction.
Allow me
anybody makes it to the cabinet, and that is it.
Yes, allow me to come in now. You've answered like
yes,
two or three of my questions already. So, but going forward, because, Nigerians will say, yes, we've heard all of them, further breakdowns, letting us really understand the economic issues that we've gone through years back. Now, moving on, we see a decline in inflation. We also see a good GDP figures, which the government is talking about. They're all excited about it. Yeah. Very soon, we expect the ban on Twitter to also be lifted. Third wave of COVID-19, neither here nor there. Vaccination continues. What are we looking at? Let's now project, Dr. Adedipe. What are you expecting with regards to Nigeria's economy despite the challenges?
Thank you so very much. All right, thank you so very much. Now, my expectation for the third quarter that just ended is based on two things. One, we are coming from. Remember, our economy contracted heavily second quarter of last year. It also contracted, but at a lower figure in the third quarter of 2020. So when we get the data for third quarter of this year, that data will compare with the third quarter of 2020. So I expect still a moderately high growth rate, and that will be 3 and 4%. So if we get that for third quarter, remember, the third wave of thing has not resulted in government reacting by locking down the economy. And so far as the economy was not locked down, the economy continued to run as it had been running from the beginning of the year. Pattern all over the world, by the way, not peculiar to Nigeria. Which means what we see here, economy will still come with a strong growth rate. When we say strong, we are double digit, because what we actually prefer is to grow double digit, which if we do in 7 years, double the size of the economy. But this time around, strong means it is greater per population. Let me also give some good news here. Because oftentimes people talk about growth of Nigeria's population. Do they track what is actually happening there? In 2020, our population growth rate was 2.58% per annum. In 2021, the estimate is 2.51%, which means population growth rate in Nigeria is also slowing. And if our economic growth between 3 and 4% in the third quarter, we expect that data this month. If it does, that means it is still above the rate of growth of the population. So if we sustain that for the rest of the year, let's end 2021, and that is my expectation, at a growth rate, great growth rate of our population, which is 2.51% for 2021. So now, how does that play out in the other macroeconomic statistics? Now, for me, I expect inflation rate to also moderate further. And the reason is very simple. Look at the growth of the economy and the fact that it seems, not just in Nigeria, but all over, everybody seems to be running to make up for the loss of 2020 all over the world. And that's why we also sound this warning to our government, that our government should not relent economy, which is also part of why I'm not one of those that will complain about sovereign debt, and I will tell you why. Now, when countries borrow, you can also check the history. Go back to immediately after the Second World War. Where we are today, the US economy was in that after the World War. In fact, in their own case, they borrowed so much to prosecute that the challenge the leaders face, like we are putting to our government today, is to grow rapidly, so that in growing rapidly, they can also generate the more revenue to be able to defray the obligations on the sovereign debt. They seen in other countries. Britain was in that position in 1963, when the GDP of Britain Kingdom then was less than their sovereign debt. That is to say, that GDP. We are not even near that in Nigeria, okay? But for me, if this government, let them maintain the discipline of putting this money in infrastructure. Go ahead, also, these are data I've checked all over the world, okay? If you invest in infrastructure, it really reduces the cost of doing business. As businesses make more money, they pay more tax to develop the revenue base with which to defray the maturing obligations on the pattern historically. Go and check the top 10 on the infrastructure index all over the world. And top 10 also, sovereign debt GDP ratio. And tell me how many of those that have the best infrastructure in the world are also among the top 10 in sovereign. Very strong correlation. About 67% I found when I checked the data. In order to reduce the cost of doing business, if that reduces, the private sector makes more money, and of course, we need to sound therefore is that it is good to borrow to develop infrastructure, but please, let's also ensure we get value for money, okay? If we put value to money into that, then we see an expanded capacity to service those maturing obligations, but at the same time, as those companies are growing, because the cost of doing business reduces, they will also create jobs. So that also connects to dealing with the external sector. If we find the courage to begin to buy things that are made in Nigeria, then we begin to create jobs here. And as I said earlier on, government should lead that. That will deal with unemployment, the high rate of unemployment.
All right.
High bad interest, cost of business connects to interest rates as well. Because if you ask the bankers today, they will tell you one of the reasons they can't, because their cost of doing business is high.
Yeah.
So if we have an environment, the cost of doing business, that also will feed into the lending rate. So quick card, anytime we talk about the mystery index. So if your GDP is growing, and inflation rate is moderating, unemployment rate is also dropping, and at the same time, it is dropping, then the mystery index will also drop. That is the interaction between them. So but it takes tremendous energy. The government must be focused and forthright and provide leadership. It must spend, borrow to spend, let it be enough for recurrent expenditure and the infrastructure value for money. A kilometer of road in Nigeria, dollar for dollar, should not be more expensive road in Ghana. I don't want to go too far. Let's say we did a sub-bridge of West. That's the way we should consider things when we are negotiating. If we get a kilometer of road more expensive in Ghana, dollar for dollar, then there is some rent inside the price that.
Honestly, despite the network challenges, we're still able to make sense of this interview. Dr. Abiodun Adedipe, I must thank you. It's so interesting talking about Nigeria. We can go on and on, but time does not permit us to go more than this. Thank you so much for spending your Friday with us on this very special Friday, October 1st. Chief Consultant, B. Adedipe Associates Limited, Dr. Abiodun Adedipe. I really appreciate this. Enjoy the rest of your day.